Hey, Good News family. This is Tana Heineman, the host of our Now What podcast. This is where we unpack Sunday's message and we talk about how to practically apply it to our everyday lives. I love that you're here with us, and I love that we get the opportunity to spend more time with our pastors and have them teach us even more what the Word has to say about our everyday lives. We learn from Jesus that one of the best ways to grow is in community together. So join us as we unpack Sunday's message.
Was that it?
That was it. That's how we start now. Hey, Good News family. This is PJ's first time in a while.
Hey, everyone.
We're just like letting him know, hey, dude, we're on the air now. We're ready to go.
I'm ready.
No, really. I'm so glad you guys are here with us. I'm glad PJ's here today. I don't know what you guys do for Memorial Day. Most people I talk to, it's like plant flowers, do some yard work because it feels genuinely safe in Nebraska now that we're not going to get snow again.
Thank God.
Hopefully. Yeah. Maybe poop scooped for the first time since
Krista did that yesterday.
the beginning of winter. Yeah, what'd you do this weekend?
So studied a little bit on Saturday, and then Chris and I have found a new series, and I don't know the name of it. It's pretty good. Mm-hmm. And then we grilled. Mm-hmm. So we have a larger grill, and it's done. Mm. I didn't know it until a couple of days ago.
Oh no! It's like dead, like it died.
Yeah,
oh.
Like it won't work. Won't get to 350 degrees.
No.
So I went out and bought a $20
charcoal grill.
Charcoal grill, yeah.
Mm.
And burgers were great.
Yeah.
So we cooked burgers and hung out and watched a couple of episodes of The Office.
Okay. Did any of the kids come over?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All the kids.
All the kids?
All the kids.
Because there's three of them basically
That's
now.
right.
Mm-hmm. She's off camera. We won't embarrass her yet. But in maybe like August, we're going to have to pull her on the air here.
Life changes in August.
Life changing. Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yep. She's like, nope. Okay, tell me this. If you had a day off with no financial or time limits, but it was only one day, what would you want to do? Like, how would you spend it?
That's a good question.
Say studying.
No,
okay,
not at
good.
all. I have really become a homebody. Mm-hmm. But I think, Chris and I took the trip and I realized how much just going and being together and being away, mm-hmm. How really rewarding and fun. And I got energy. I didn't have any back or neck issues. I didn't have any stress.
In Italy?
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Oh,
so
did it all come back now?
It's beginning to creep, I think,
mm-hmm.
a little bit. But we just loved it. And I think trying to find ways to do that here. Of course, I'll read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do a lot of little things.
Would it be different, like winter versus summer? Like for me, summer. If I had a day off, it's going to be, I want to be by the pool with music on and no expectation. I just want to be there all day long. That's what I would do. But obviously in the winter, that's not going to work. So then it would be, probably take a nap. That would be a big one.
Yeah.
Short nap. Not waste the whole day, but.
I don't know. I think I like having options and whatever is right in the moment. So reading, go out, do a little yard work, mm-hmm. go get something to eat, hang out with Chris a little bit.
That's good.
Yeah.
Glad you like each other still after 25 years.
We do.
Nate will say that all the time. Is it a bad thing that I still like you so much after 27 years? I'm like, nope, it's a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
Because I was real rough there for about a good 10 of them at least. Sure. So glad you still like me. Okay, I'm a little bit nervous about this, so I'm pulling this closer.
Okay.
I don't want to have to re-record because we can't hear you. So, I am really happy that we're going to do the Sermon on the Mount because it is like 3 life-altering, mind-blowing chapters.
It is.
In Matthew. And whenever I read it, I kind of imagine myself like sitting on the ground like I'm at Jazz on the Green. Do you know what Jazz on the Green is?
Yeah.
Okay. Sitting there, like looking up, listening to this guy who's been like healing people. He has really kind eyes. That's what all the pictures show us, that he's got really kind eyes. And I'm probably shushing everyone around me because I want to hear what he's got to say. Sure. And then I'm like super shushing because there's people probably losing their minds about some of the things he's saying. I just picture like even on a Sunday morning in church, you can hear people talking and they're either, most of the time they're agreeing with what you're saying. Every once in a while, you might hear like a, they got something to say about that. But could you imagine all of them sitting out there listening to Jesus and he's saying some really paradigm shifting.
Yeah, and it was actually really good news for them.
Yes. But are they then seeing him, they're like, oh yeah, this guy is actually going to overthrow Rome? but because he's not saying fighting kind of words.
No, he's not. And we'll get into that
Okay.
as we get into the series. But I think he's speaking to the hopeless, and he's actually providing hope, and they have access. So it's not hierarchical religious systems. It's actually, this is for you now if you'll enter.
I have a super practical question. Do you think if there's, all these people sitting out there, are they actually able to hear him from where he is, or are they literally having to do like the telephone game and like pass it on back to each other? These are the kind of weird things I think about.
Sure, that's pretty weird.
I'm sorry.
I don't know. I think so. As we understand how Matthew compiled it, this was probably many sermons that he over the course through the Holy Spirit he compiled and put into one, long example of the things that he said.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many people would be there. But we know that in one instance when Jesus was giving a long set of sermons, I like how there was a pastor who explained, we really appreciate all these long set of sermons, but people are hungry. We've got to let them go. He fed 5,000 people, men,
Yep.
not including family. So he must have either had a great voice,
Yeah.
or I don't think they played the phone game. I
No,
figure-
okay. They're hearing it.
Yeah,
That's what
they
I
are.
think too. I think so. Okay. One of the things you said in your message that really stood out to me was the challenge to our faith is that philosophically and theoretically we agree with Jesus in what he's saying in this message, but practically we don't like it. And it's upside down and it goes against our desires.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it goes against mine. I want to serve the Lord. I want to be wholehearted. But many of the things, I mean, and it's day-to-day life. I mean, literally, I had a dream Saturday night that sounds weird of a situation. And in the dream, I was really upset. Well, come Sunday morning, somebody tells me about a person who did this, that it was real.
Oh,
So it's one of those things, and God has been really kind through the years of kind of giving me a heads up. But even in the dream, I was frustrated. And then when I'm awake and I hear about it, I'm frustrated. And we're in the Sermon on the Mount. Because there's a part of me who goes, all right, God, how do I handle this now in the understanding of Sermon on the Mount and wanting to be a godly person? How do I hold the tension of this is not right to, man, Jesus says, turn the other cheek or don't respond in this way. So I just think it's so practical. It's the application that's tough. Sounds great. Love
Yeah.
the idea. But
right. Sometimes I'll say, I just sometimes want permission to just say what needs to be said.
That's right. And
And
I
he
think,
says no.
I think it's what's behind it.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about. Like we really do try to follow the Lord's leading and the way He wants to, but it's really messy. It's not easy, and we're human. So
Yeah. Very human.
Yeah.
Very. Okay, so you titled this message "The Good Life,"
That's
and
right.
if I understand what you mean, so correct me. This is how I heard it: that Jesus is saying you're blessed if, and we will define blessed if things are going well and by what that good life looks like.
Right. So it's conditional, and it's the situation that you find yourself in. Wow, they have the good life. Yeah.
But Jesus is saying, he's like redefining what the good life actually is. And you said that here, blessed is the Hebrew definition of blessed, which actually means that you're coming, you're moving towards God in the middle of a situation rather
Right.
than
You're
away
connected
from
to, you're in pursuit, you're not following after the things of the world, you're not giving in to temptations, or you're not partying with sinners, or whatever however you want to describe it, that you're actually connected in pursuing. You're rooted in God, and because of that, blessing comes. Or you're finding shelter or your refuge in God
Yeah.
despite circumstances, and because of that, you're blessed.
Yeah. I like it. You did, and you just said a second of it right there. You connected to Psalm 1 and 2, and
Yep.
really like finding our refuge in God, even just where we're staying planted. You even talked about even in the winter months. We talked about that, I think, last week or so. You were gone, and we were talking about Psalm 1 a couple weeks ago, I think it was. And just how even the winter months, it looks like death, but there is a lot happening
That's right.
underneath that
Yep.
we don't know about. And that is a blessed season as well, because
That's
it's
right.
producing what needs to happen to produce fruit.
That's right.
So this week we talked about the first three blessed are statements. Blessed are statements. And depending on the translation, we're reading, you kind of said like the most accurate way maybe to say who Jesus is actually calling blessed are these three: crushed in spirit, mourning, mourn, mourning,
right.
grieving, and meek.
That's right.
How is crushed in spirit different from mourning?
So poor in spirit is, it's like you're bleeding energy. So he's using a lot of Hebrew terms, trying to convey a new message, but going back to things they're familiar with. So they are really familiar with the Torah, first 5 books of the Bible. They're familiar with the prophets' writings and wisdom literature and things like that. So he's using language, and here's the thing: Hebrew is very descriptive. So what one word in Hebrew conveys, we need a lot of English or even Greek words to kind of convey the fullness. So he's talking about being poor in spirit. And one of the definitions is crushed. It could be angry. It could be frustrated when it comes to definition of spirit. And when we talk about the Ruach, or the breath of God that animates our life or energizes our life, he's talking about that has begun to wane, that it's slipping away, or you don't have the ability to do what needs to be done. So, I call it bleeding out.
Are you losing hope? Are you weary?
I would assume all of those things, but really you don't have the necessary ability to do whatever it is to get out of the situation or to move forward. You feel like you're trapped and you just can't move forward. That's it.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good picture too of like feeling trapped. What do we do in those situations?
It's interesting. I think most of the time when we find ourselves in those situations, we become helpless, we become hopeless, we begin to give up. And I think who Jesus is speaking to, because Rome is oppressing on one side, and then you've got the Jewish leaders that have so complicated the service to God that it seems like there's a never-ending group of rules or hoops people have to jump through that's crushing their spirit. And so you have these two things that are happening, and he's going, but if, blessed are the poor in spirit, the doorway to the kingdom of God is right here for you. I will give you something that will meet that. And I think he's just refocusing in some way and introducing them. You don't have to get to a certain level, nor do you have to get to a place outside of your current circumstance. I have something to give you right now.
What is the something?
It's him.
Yeah.
It's his way of life. It's his spirit. It's his leading. It's hope. It is, stay connected to me that I can give you what you need. Yep. And I know I've wrestled with how do we communicate this, because we're so conditionally related. Like we think our situation determines how good things are. And yet I think the more I have deepened the roots in Jesus, the more I recognize, good or bad, my truest blessing comes from being connected to the Lord.
Yep, that's good. How do we, when we move on to the second point of mourning or grieving, how do we process that blessing in grief? Because that's really hard. And I wonder too, like maybe, I'm sure you've had to. Can you think of ways where you've had to reconcile blessing in grief?
Yeah, I think loss is just part of life, and I think some of that went through a long list in the message, and sometimes that is physical death. We lose somebody that we love. I think sometimes that is recognizing our own personal limits. The things that I thought I would accomplish, or the things I thought I would do, or my desire to want to help somebody, and I just can't, maybe it's my child, and I can't seem to help them get out of their situation. There's a grief that comes with that. Yeah. I think things we've said and done, maybe things we've caused. I think sometimes there's been situations where maybe I was disappointed even with my own self. I thought I would be further along, or I would have done something better, or I thought I'd be a better person, or I'd be more free, or I would be kinder, or I thought I'd be over that thing by now, right? All of those things. And I think the realization of, man, God, I can't seem to get past this. And God says it's there. When you basically come to the end of yourself, I'm there. And the doorway to my kingdom is open for you to receive what I have.
Yep. And it feels like sometimes, even like thinking that maybe I should have been past something, or this shouldn't still be hanging over me or bothering me or whatever. But each time that we are kind of going through it, there's progress being made.
That's
and there's
right.
more
Yep.
and more of the kingdom of God in our lives, and the evidence of his power, his grace, his spirit, his hope in us. I can remember different seasons and literally saying, God, how long am I gonna have to keep reliving consequences of a decision I made 20 years ago,
Right.
or whatever. And I would say that over and over. And as maturity came, it kind of became, well, this isn't really still any fun, but I am growing and I'm knowing him deeper and knowing him more. So then when it comes, it's like, okay.
You're right.
Okay. All right, what do we want to work on today? How much are you going to, how much more about yourself are you going to reveal to me? How much more are you potentially going to heal me and change me and make me more like you? Then I guess we can walk through this valley again or whatever. The spiral staircase is another example of just like when you're having to reface something over and over and you think, I thought I already got out of this room. And you
Right.
keep seeing the same room every time you come around the staircase, but you're at a different vantage point. And you know him more and you know yourself more.
And I think, too, your ability to bounce back, your ability to receive forgiveness, your ability to release something, your ability to, in spite of what you're feeling, you're able to separate that from the things that you need to go about. So I just think, like you said, maturity, depth, all of those things, we're still going to feel things, we're still going to remember things, and yet the sting of it or the stopping power of it, it lessens. Because now we've learned how to, wait a minute, I know what Jesus says about me. I know it's forgiven. I know there's consequences. Nevertheless, there's always hope. There's always the possibility that God brings good out of this. So I think one of the other things too, I think a lot of Christians probably, wrestle with this is when they look at the condition of the world. They're really frustrated. It's like, man, we are beginning to lose the moorings of, we were connected to something, and now it's so crazy. And in your heart that where it's headed, where a decision a person is making, a culture is making, it's not connected to the truth. Now it's connected to whatever. And that's going to lead to chaos or loss or confusion or bondage. And I think that grieves people, and our natural reaction is to go, okay, well, go ahead. And yet God calls us to the world and to people and to the lost and to the broken and to the people who hate Jesus. And so it causes this thing in us to mourn for what we really truly desire. And so and I think it's is that we're looking at our world or our neighbor or the lost or people who are going through really incredibly difficult situations, and our hearts are broken. And that's where we can go, God, I need in this moment your kingdom, your comfort to be able to handle this, but also to move forward toward those in need.
Yeah, it's good. In regards to meek, that was the third one we addressed. In the sermon, you quoted somebody named Greg Laurie. Should I know who that is?
He is a pastor, came out of the Jesus movement.
Okay.
And just a pretty great communicator.
Yeah, I liked what you said, or what he said here. He says, the word Jesus used here for meek is a Greek term that describes the breaking of a powerful stallion, that it is now under control. In the same way, when we surrender ourselves to God's will, we exhibit meekness, strength under control. And some translations will say humble instead of meek, which humble, again, is the same. That's strength under control. You can, I can't remember what I was watching recently, but it was a guy saying that he was celebrating the fact that he was humble. I'm like,
I'm the most humble man on the earth.
that's literally, literally. Like, okay. Yeah, so if we have to say that, then we're probably not really getting it. But in that humility, I don't have to defend myself. I don't have to retaliate to make a point
Yep.
that I'm better than, stronger than,
Yep.
more entitled than, or I don't know what
And,
words you
and,
use.
and that is, I think sometimes we've lost a little of the power when it comes to humble because we have this idea of
Yes.
less than, and that's not what it means. And it actually means afflicted. That afflicted by someone with power, afflicted by someone who has the ability to take away something or freedom or what have you. And in response, it's not turning the other cheek. It's actually choosing not to retaliate, which is a choice. So that is the idea. You imagine this horse, powerful, several thousand pounds of muscle. That's all it is. And yet, with the reins and the restraint,
Yeah.
they're held back. That is what Jesus is trying to convey. This idea of you could, but you don't, and you choose all that power to withhold it in order not to retaliate.
It's such a beautiful picture because there's videos sometimes, of like watching a horse be broken or whatever.
Right.
And they could whip that person right on the ground, and yet they choose restraint.
Yeah.
And just thinking about what is required in that horse to choose restraint. I think there's an element of trust in there that
Yeah.
he decides he's going to trust the trainer. And even though I can destroy you, I won't destroy you
Right.
because you prove that you seem to be out for my best interest and you're wanting to do something productive
Right.
or whatever. But in this case, in the biblical sense where Jesus is talking, that strength under control is when I can take you out with my words, or I can,
And I mean, like, how many times Jesus, when he's being betrayed,
Yeah.
don't you understand? I call down 12 legions of angels on the cross when people are mocking him. He shows restraint by not coming down. He wants to finish. So I think there's pictures of, because here's the thing, is it may take me days or even weeks, maybe months to wrestle through my desire to do something other than what I feel like God is calling me to do in response to somebody else.
Yep.
Not that I want vengeance, but oftentimes a pastor, we know behind the scenes things, and yet some things may be said about us that are not true, or about someone else that are not true. But because we allow that person to come to us in confidence, we won't reveal something. And so we have to show restraint when we see somebody lying or not telling the truth, or partial truths that make things look different. So I think, having to wrestle that out, I think that's normal. I think, it sounds great.
Right. Philosophically, we said it sounds wonderful, but actually fleshing that out,
Yeah.
it sounds miserable.
Yeah.
Because you talked about those who feel frustrated because they consistently have to show restraint. They may ask the question, what good has it actually done for me? And sometimes you don't see this side, what the positive impact is of you keeping your mouth shut.
But what about the
staying-
blessing? See, I think that's what Jesus is pointing to. He's saying, you stay
That's
connected
good.
in the season. And this may be a winter season, this may be a moment, but long term, your leaf is not going to wither. You're going to produce fruit. You're going to find shelter in me, refuge in me. So I just think this is temporary,
Yeah.
this moment,
Yeah.
but the blessing is much longer term.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So there are going to be a lot more upside down principles that we're addressing as we move forward in this. So today we just literally touched on 3 of them. So how can we apply what we focused on this week to our everyday lives? Not jumping ahead to the ones we have plenty we're going to
Sure.
apply to our lives, but how do we apply this week what we've learned? How do we face the crushing, the grief? How do we live meek? Without defending or retaliating? What would you say?
I think, first of all, you got to go through the scriptures, and then you have to identify where You know, I imagine all of us have some places where we're poor in spirit. This place where, man, this is robbing me of joy, or this is robbing me of the desire to follow Jesus, or maybe it's robbing me just of energy. I can't seem to get past this. And that's the place where you need to meet with the Lord. I think a secondary thing is once you identify it, now you got to figure out, okay, who can I go to share this? You know, we need Christian community. We need to be able to talk about things. And then third, what is a practical way that you can begin to walk it out? If you can identify it and you can communicate with somebody else now, well, how do I begin to practice what I feel like God is saying? Right? And I think those three things matter. And I think just like everything else, you grow into it. And when it comes to mourning, you know, mourning has its own timeline. It's sneaky. It just kind of shows up. But I think you got to mourn as long as you need to, but you just lean into Jesus, and then other people to help you walk that out.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it like that, because sometimes in the mourning and the pain, it gets hard to lean into Jesus because you don't know what to do with all of your feelings and why you didn't meet and why you didn't X, Y, or Z that you were asking the Lord for. And so sometimes that can be hard. And you can watch people will tend to pull away and isolate from God, but then also from their Christian community, because I just want to be sad.
And I want to be mad. Yeah, that's
and
right.
I don't want you to talk me out of it quite yet, you know? So we have to recognize when we're doing that. And then also, if you're the one in mourning, I need to recognize, oh, I see where he's at. It's okay. Yeah. I'm not going to let him push me away. I'm just going to keep reminding him of truth, because he needs to hear it, and he knows it's the truth. It's just right now he can't acknowledge it. And I think on both sides, sometimes it gets too easy to isolate and pull away. And then we get to, I don't want to say anything to them, or I don't want to irritate them. No, you're led by the Holy Spirit. And if you're getting that thing in you where you know, like, yeah, I need to reach out, then reach out. Yeah. Make the phone call, send the text, you know, something. Don't let people pull completely away to be alone in the midst of their pain. Right. Even though that's the natural tendency, is to push you away.
I think there's two pictures that come to mind. One of them is the four friends with the paralytic. I think there's a time when somebody gets to the end of, you know, poor in spirit, or they're mourning, and there's just nothing else they can do, that there's somebody there that is willing to help you process or handle what's going on. And then I think of Job. And originally his friends did right by sitting with him quietly. Yeah. So I think there's a time when we use words. I think there's a time when we don't. Presence is more impactful than what we can say. Yeah. 'Cause sometimes we're trying to talk them out of something when God's going, no, I need them to lean into what they're experiencing and feeling. And we just need to be with them as they're going through it. And so I think you need to use some judgment in that.
That's really good. And you said in this message, we need to be willing to sit in the tension. I have a feeling we're going to be saying that for the next however many weeks we're in this series, because that's literally what this is all about.
That's right.
Is submitting to and trusting in the king of an upside down kingdom that is foreign to how we naturally think we should respond and do things. And there is a wrestle there. And that's a good thing. I think if I'm not wrestling, I'd be concerned maybe about where I'm at with the Lord, you know, but there is a tension. And I kind of feel like you and I had some pretty, I don't know, down to earth gut conversations over the last few days of just facing some losses in our lives and some situations that are out of our control. And there is tension there, no matter how long we've been following Jesus, you know, there's still this is a hard one, you know, and whether it's in ministry where you feel like, oh, I just want this person to have breakthrough and they just can't quite get there. And it's heartbreaking. Or whether it's loss, or whether it's our children, or whatever it might be, there is tension. And I don't know that we ever, maybe we do. Maybe there's a point we get to where the tension lessens and maybe it's eventually gone and you're like, oh, okay, this is just God doing something. I don't think that ever goes away, you know?
I think the other tension that I want to give permission to maybe people who are watching is you can be angry at God.
Yeah.
I mean, he understands that if 2/3 of the Psalms were laments, there's this voicing of displeasure or anger or where are you or why is this happening? And so I think that is part of the mourning process. If you're afflicted, if it's crying out, if you're mourning, God, where are you? I think God recognizes that. If Jesus voiced those words too, why have you forsaken me? He's speaking on behalf of humanity, even though it was very personal. So I just think those things need to happen. You don't need to feel bad. I wouldn't judge his character, right? That's what Satan does. But you can ask God, where are you? I need you. Those kind of things. I think that's a necessary process of grief.
And part of that grief is the faith then that, and you see that all through the Psalms, I'm going to remind my soul what I do know is truth. And so like you said, don't judge God's character. Because we don't understand we don't know what we're talking about. So God is who he is. So I need to just keep saying in my grief, in my why, in my I don't understand, and I'm kind of mad at you right now. But my faith tells me you are whatever. You keep your promises. You comfort us when we are in mourning. You meet us even when it looks like you have forsaken us. Your word says, so we just have to keep, just like David did, reminding ourselves of his character while we still have permission to say, but I really don't like this.
That's right. And I think even one of the mourning definitions is that you're mourning while you're waiting on the promises of God to be displayed. And I just think, Christianity is a lot about tension. I think being alive is a lot about tension, but especially in Christian faith is that we're trusting in what we can't see or what may be happening behind the scenes or what God is doing in us, and trusting that if we do the things that he says and we stay connected, the blessing follows.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for kind of chewing through this today. I'm looking forward to the rest of the series and just really applying these upside down blesseds that are the good life redefined, I guess, and properly defined. So we thank you guys all for being here today. And we know being crushed in spirit, being in a place of mourning and grief, or being in a place of meek humility, those are not easy places. We are not minimizing that at all. We feel it with you. Keep trusting in the God that you know, and trust that he's speaking truth. He knows what he's talking about when he says we're blessed in those situations, because his kingdom, the reality of his kingdom, is right here for us each and every day. We are for you as well. Have a wonderful week, and we'll chat again next time.
Bye.
Thanks again for joining us today. We would love for you to tell others about the podcast. Make sure you subscribe to it too, because this will help others find out about it. If you missed it before, we love to hear from you. So if you have any stories to tell about how the message impacted you, or maybe you have a question or comment, make sure you email us at podcast@goodnews.church. Y'all, this is my favorite day of the week. So go give away what you just learned, and we'll chat again next time.